Hey guys, it's Kesara, and today I'm going to be doing my review for House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. So this book is an adult fantasy book, but it really feels a little bit more like an adult, paranormal romance fantasy book, if you know what I mean. But it is set in another world, sort of. It's set in Crescent City. It's following a character named Bryce who is half fae, half human, but she has zero power, and she hasn't done the drop yet, which would make her immortal. But she is best friends with Danica Fendir, who also happens to be the leader of a wolf pack and is going to be one of the most powerful wolves of all time. Except at the very beginning of the novel, Bryce's best friend Danica and her entire wolf pack is murdered. So Bryce is left with all of the pieces, and the rest of this novel is set 2 years later when Bryce finds out the person that went to jail for Danica's murder is probably not the person that actually killed her. So I really love the setup of this book because it's set up as kind of a murder mystery, which is really interesting. I didn't really expect that from this book. I love a good fantasy mystery novel, so when I saw this, I was just like, I think I could potentially really like it. Obviously, this is by Sarah J. Maas, and I have read books by Sarah J. Maas before, so I kind of know what her writing is like. I've read 6 of her books so far. I've read all of the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, and I've read 2 books in the Throne of Glass series. Don't love Throne of Glass series. I do still plan on continuing on with it. I do really love A Court of Mist and Fury and the books after that. Hated A Court of Thorns and Roses though. So I went into this book very skeptically. I have to say it has exceeded all of my expectations for this book, but my expectations to start with weren't very high for it. One thing I will say, if you like Sarah J. Maas and her books, you will probably absolutely love this book. It has the romance that you're going to expect from it. It has action. It has the suspense, because Sarah J. Maas does such a good job of writing suspense, and I honestly didn't think it was as cringy as some of her other books. Like, the scenes in this one were not nearly as cringy as I've seen. Even in A Court of Mist and Fury, there are a few cringy scenes in there. This one, I didn't feel that way as much, so I really liked that aspect of it as well. Planning to keep this mostly spoiler free, but there will be a section towards the end in which I will talk spoilers. As always, I'm going to talk about 4 things: character, plot, world building, and writing style. So we're going to start with character. One thing I will say about Sarah J. Maas, I think she writes characters very, very well. Her books are very character driven, and they definitely explore your main characters very well and make you absolutely love the main characters. In this book, the main character is Bryce, and she reminds me a lot of Selena Sardarthian. She's just this snarky, strong female character. She's a little bit too snarky at times, which annoys me, and she's a little bit too angry at times, which again annoys me, but I love it when characters annoy me, so I don't know what that says about me, but it works for me. I will say I don't relate very well to Bryce because she is very much a party girl, and even though she gives up alcohol and things like that, her mindset is not the type that I would relate to well, but I liked her in the sense that I really understood her as a character and understood where she was coming from and what she was willing to do. So I liked those aspects of it, and she is very strong. She's a very strong female character, and I think it's not too over the top in the way some of Maas's other characters can be more over the top. So I like that about her, but she is a little too snarky at times, and she does go over the top a bit as well. There are also 2 side characters in here. There's Hunt Athlar, who is a fallen angel and is being kept kind of as a slave assassin sort of thing, and I really love his backstory. His backstory is fantastic, and I think she does a really great job of characterizing him as well and the things that he's willing to do. I think he has one of the best backstories in this entire book. It is tragic, and it definitely makes him grow as a person, and it really works for his character. I absolutely loved that aspect of the story. Then we have Rune Dannon, who is Bryce's half-brother, who is full fae and who is a prince and heir to his father. I enjoyed Rune Dannon as well, and I enjoyed their relationship. It's definitely a very brother-sister relationship. They fight a lot, but you can tell at the end of the day, they love each other, and they have a really great relationship that I absolutely love. There are parts of this where I'm annoyed at Bryce because of kind of the things that she does with Rune and also with Hunt, but overall, I really love the way the characters are done in here, and the character development is also done really well. And then we have to talk about plot. I don't know what it is about the plot, because there are some parts of this plot I absolutely love the idea of. The setup is absolutely fantastic. I love the setup of this. I love the mysteries. I love the outcomes of the plot. Some of the twists are really, really good that I absolutely love. I don't love the way the plot is done though, and I don't love some of the consequences of the plot. Like something really huge and crazy and terrible will happen, and then like literally 10 pages later, it's just like completely done, and like there's no lasting consequences. And that happens, I feel like, in almost all of Maas's books that I've read, so maybe that's not a plot thing, maybe that's a writing style thing, but I love the ideas of this plot more than I love the execution of it, if that makes sense. I also think there are some aspects to the plot that it's just a little too ostentatious. It's the only way I can say that. Like, there are these really high stakes for like no reason, and then like the tension is cut and like the stakes are like completely gone. So I feel like I really liked reading this the first time around, but now that I know how it turns out, if I reread this book, I'm not gonna like it as much, if you know what I mean. So I enjoyed it, but I feel like it's not one of those lasting enjoyments that I'm going to love it for, you know, like years to come or anything like that. I enjoyed it for now, but I don't know how long that'll last. Next, we're gonna talk about world building. I do think the world building was very meh in this book. There was one aspect of the world building I really loved, which was marrying technology with magic, because it's set in a world that has similar technology to what we have, but it's not our world. It's a high fantasy world, but with our type of technology, like internet, cell phones, like those sort of things, which is really cool. And I love that aspect of it, and it actually works really well in this story, but it's not set in our world, which I also really love, because for some reason, I don't like fantasy books set in our world. I don't know why, I just don't. It has to be set in a place that is different enough from my own world that I can get lost in it. So this worked really well for me, while at the same time it had like things like texting and cell phones and things like that that just worked for me in ways that I didn't really expect for it to work for me, because I honestly don't expect myself to love magic and technology together, and it just worked in this book for me. But pretty much everything else about this book kind of annoyed me. I liked the different houses, because there's House of Earth and Blood, which is what this book is about, obviously, but there's House of Sky and Breath as well, and like a few different houses. House of Many Waters and House of Flame and Shadows are the rest of the houses there, which I like the idea of that. I think it's really interesting, but it's filled out, and the details of it are done through like things that are very typical of like paranormal fantasy and paranormal romance in particular, which is like werewolves, vampires, fae, like all of those sort of things that have their own context to it. So it's really easy for the author to just throw in those words so that they don't have to actually put in the details. And that kind of annoys me, because while it has the world building, it's there and you can understand it, it lacks the nuance that I want from my world building. So it makes it easy to read. I didn't love the world building, if you know what I mean. And last, we're going to talk about writing style. Like I mentioned earlier, Sarah J. Maas's writing style is very hit or miss for me, because I really love the way that she weaves tension throughout the story. She does such a good job of weaving like romantic tension, even like mysteries and suspense, like those side of it I really like. I don't love the way she writes action. Like everything leading up to the actual battle, absolutely love. Once we get into the actual battle, I tune out so bad. I don't know what it is about the way the action scenes are written. I don't get into them. But once we start getting into the more characterization scenes, like there's a particular sort of tension related character scene towards the end that I really loved. But all of the battle sort of things that led up to that, I didn't really care for at all. Very hit or miss for me. I love the way characterization is done in her book. I think she does such a good job of leading with her characters, but like I said, the way the world building is done just does not work for me at all. And I feel like that's kind of how all of her books are for me. Some aspects I really love, and then some aspects annoy the crap out of me. And I also think she finds a way to look for all of my pet peeves in books and includes them in the book. I have a very specific pet peeve about plot twists, and of course it's in this book. Of course it's in this book. Why wouldn't it be in this book? There are things about it just annoy me so much and frustrate me, but at the same time it's so easy to read and so much fun that I enjoyed it immensely, even with the things that frustrated me about this book. Now that I've said that, I want to talk a little bit in spoilers. So if you haven't read this book, if you like Sarah J. Maas, I would recommend it. If you don't love her books, I don't recommend it yet. If the second book comes out and it's really good, then I possibly could recommend this. I like this more than Throne of Glass, and I like this more than A Court of Thorns and Roses. I don't love it more than A Court of Mist and Fury though, if that that gives you an idea of whether you might like this book or not. Overall, I did think it was an enjoyable book, and I definitely liked it a lot more than I was expecting out of the first book in a new series by Sarah J Maas, so I ended up giving it 3.25 stars. Now, if you haven't read this book, I recommend you sign off on this video because I'm gonna be going into spoilers now. So the things that frustrate me about this book so much. That ending. Why? Like, all of these things happen. The city is basically ruined. All of the demons show up and like destroy everything. And yet everything is magically healed. And everything is just so perfect now. And Bryce, who spent her whole life as this nothing with no power, is suddenly one of like the most powerful people ever. Like, why? One of the things I loved about Bryce was that she wasn't super powerful and that she had to get around in this world that loved power so much, and she didn't have it. But now she's super powerful, and she's also super snarky and such a strong female character that what is the second book even gonna be about? Like, what character development can she possibly have in the second book? I don't see. Like, I really don't see what could happen in the next book in this series, because like she's just at the top of the world now by the end of this book. It's so frustrating to me. Also, I mentioned, I think, about consequences in the beginning of this video, and in one of my vlogs, I mentioned about like losing a limb. Hunt having his wings cut off and then they magically regrowing. Part of the reason why losing a limb is so terrible is the fact that you have to live without it. The fact that it just regrows kind of takes away from getting it cut off in the first place. And I do realize, like 100%, like that was set up earlier on in the book. Like it was completely set up, and I actually liked the way that setup and payoff worked, because it was set up in kind of a funny way where he was talking about, you know, it was more of a sexual sort of way, almost a joking way between him and Micah, and then it was paid off with him getting his wings cut off instead of, you know, the other part. And I liked that aspect of it, that they had that setup and that payoff, but the actual consequences of it, of course, it didn't happen. The wings obviously grew back, and that frustrated me. I also think there was this really interesting opportunity at the end to have this complexity of the relationship between Rune and Bryce, in the fact that now she's also obviously a Starborn Fae with a lot of power and is probably a better heir than Rune is, but he just kind of like accepts her no problem. And I feel like this just unrealistic. And I thought it would be so interesting to see that complexity added to their relationship, and then no. I also am really sad that there's not more of a relationship between her and her father, because I feel like either the characters are on good terms with Bryce or they're evil people. Like, there's no in between. You can't have a good character that's on bad terms with Bryce or an evil character that's on good terms with her. Like, either they're good people that are on good terms with her, or they're bad people that are on bad terms with her. Like, I wish there was some middle ground in those character relationships. Like, I love the character development, but the way the character relationships are done, it just doesn't work for me. Anyways, I feel like I'm rambling on a lot. I really just wanted to talk about that ending. Let me know in the comments if you've read this book, because I would love to discuss it with you guys and what you guys thought of it, because this is, I feel like, a very polarizing book. So that's all I have for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed watching. I post videos on Sundays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, so consider subscribing. And if you'd like to be notified as soon as I upload, you can click that little bell icon. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up to support my channel. All social media links are in the description down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.